Snow crawled sideways across the prairie, turning fence posts into pale ghosts that bowed under the weight of January breath. Nora Fields, widow, keeper of a two-stall barn and 20 worn acres, moved grain sacks into a corner stable, boots creaking loud in a world muffled by drifts. Wind hissed through knotholes like a cat that hated every soul alive. Just before dusk throttled the last color from the sky, the barn door shuddered. A man lurched inside, one hand clamped to his ribs, the other dragging a Henry rifle that trailed blood across the threshing floor. Snow clung to his beard in white shards. Behind him the blizzard raged, erasing footprints faster than sin. Nora did not flinch. She set the grain sack down, wiped her palms on her coat, and reached for a wooden stool. No questions, no scream, only a quiet nod that said, "Sit before you fall." The stranger sank, breath cutting in broken threads. Wind slammed the door shut. Silence folded over the stall like a heavy quilt. She crossed to the tack room, returned with moonshine, linen, and a battered tin cup. The man's eyes followed, unsure, yet he let her pour liquor over the torn fabric of his coat. Steam rose. Pain tightened his jaw. Nora's voice finally slipped between boards, low and measured. "Bullet?" He shook his head. "Knife." She cleaned the gash anyway, movements even as though mending harness leather. When bleeding slowed, she pointed at the loft ladder. He climbed 2 rungs before collapsing, so she braced a shoulder beneath his arm and helped him reach the straw. Breath gusted from his chest like a forged bellows cooling. She tucked a wool blanket under his chin, then descended, built a small fire in the iron stove, and ladled yesterday's rabbit stew into a tin bowl. Upstairs, he watched through warped slats while she set the bowl beside him, spoon handle turned toward his better hand. She did not wait for thanks, only returned to ground level, banked the stove, and barred the door against night's hungers. Snow built a barricade outside, wind rattled hinges, then settled, beaten for now. Hours later, lantern light painted the rafters gold. The stranger whispered a single name, Calder, before sleep dragged him under. Nora nodded as though tallying grain, then extinguished the wick. Darkness closed, soft but deep. In the hush, she remembered the year her husband died under a wagon wheel, remembered townsfolk bringing casseroles and pity, cold as sleet. Tonight, no one knew she tended a wounded drifter. The blizzard would keep secrets till morning, but morning always asked for payment. Before dawn, Nora climbed the ladder to check the wound. Calder slept, face slack, pulse steady now. She left water and a crust of bread, then stepped outside to shovel a path for the milking goat. Cold sliced her cheeks. Sky showed the first bruised gray of day. On the horizon, 15 horse shapes cut against the snow, moving slow but sure. As wolves track a deer they know is hurt too deep to outrun. No banners, no law badges, only lengthening shadows that kept exact formation. Nora watched them crest a low rise, then turned back to the barn, heart measuring chances like seed poured through fingers. Inside, Calder woke to the creak of hinges. His hand went to the rifle, eyes narrowed when he saw her stiff posture. Nora simply pointed south. Riders coming. Fear flickered, but not surprise. He tried to stand. Pain folded him before the second breath. She caught him, easing him onto straw, mind already weighing what she owned that could brace a door against 15 men trained to break them. Wind flung snow against shingles, but new sounds slipped through. The distant jingle of spurs, the wet snort of horses worked hard through drifts. Calder gripped Nora's coat sleeve, mouth dry, one word rasped free. "Gang!" She understood. Kindness had bought her dawn, but dawn delivered a bill written in gunpowder. Nora laid his rifle across his chest, then crossed to the wall where her late husband's long-barreled shotgun hung, dusty but loaded. She cracked the door, sighted the riders fanning into a half circle around the yard. Snow muted their curses, yet intent cut clear. Claim what belonged to them, or burn what refused. Have you ever felt the world hold its breath just to hear what one barn wall would decide? Nora felt it now. Wood, straw, and heartbeats waiting for a choice that could not wait any longer. Wind whipped flakes sideways as the riders drew a rough semicircle, horses panting clouds into dawn. Nora eased the barn door nearly shut, leaving a slit wide enough to study faces. 15 men, some hardly more than boys, all wearing dust-stiff dusters turned gray by frost. No badges, no pity. She read hunger in their eyes, the kind that feeds on fear. A tall man with a crimson scarf nudged his gelding forward. Old bullet scar split his cheek. Silver star, once stitched on his vest, now hung loose like a mockery. Hat brim low, he called out, voice calm as a ledger. Morning, widow. We want our friend back and the money he stole. Hand him over. No fire, no blood. Inside the loft, Calder's breath rasped, body rigid against straw. He pushed the Henry rifle off his chest, attempted to chamber a round. Metal clicked too soft to calm panic. Sweat beaded despite cold. Nora climbed halfway up the ladder, spoke low enough that rafters kept the secret. They are 15. We are 2. Your legs will not hold a dash. Tell me straight, do you carry what they seek? Calder's eyes reflected a fire not yet lit. From inside his coat, he produced a small oilskin pouch, no larger than a child's fist. Coins clinked. Something heavier thudded. He met Nora's gaze. Wordless confession. She tucked the pouch into her apron pocket, then climbed down, heart beating steady now that truth weighed tangible. Crimson scarf called again, tone sharpening. Clock's ticking, ma'am. Storm hit our tracks, but noon sun melts courtesy. He gestured. 2 men dismounted, torches ready, kerosene sloshing in cans. Horses stamped, sensing sparks before flame. Nora unbarred the door just wide enough to step through, shotgun held but not raised. Snow swallowed her boots, robe whipping. She walked 3 paces into the yard, eyes on the tall man. Voice carried even, each phrase a single breath, so ears could not twist meaning. The boy's near dead from night's cold. Ride away and he lives to stand trial. Torch the barn and ashes won't feed your pockets. Scar chuckled, but one of his riders shifted, doubt creasing brow. The leader spat at Snow. No trial for thieves. We'll run him through quick, then help ourselves to whatever your husband left. He flicked 2 fingers. Torchbearers advanced. Inside the barn, Calder crawled to a slat gap, saw kerosene tins, heard Nora speaking again, her tone still iron calm. Heat of shame rose. He reached into straw, found the broken bridle bit, wrapped cloth around the tongs. Legs quivered, but he stood, breath a hiss. Nora noted the torches nearing hayloft eaves. She shouldered the shotgun but angled barrel away, signaling warning not war. Scar laughed harder, mist curling from teeth. He drew his Colt, thumbed hammer. Lead would follow kerosene. Before the first torch touched wood, a rifle crack split the hush. Scar's hat spun off, bullet crease peeling felt. Riders jerked reins. Second shot shattered a kerosene can. Liquid gushed. Torch snuffed in hiss of steam. Calder stood in loft window. Henry braced on sill, jaw clenched though knees shook under quilt. Scar cursed, aimed upward. Snow glare, blinded aim just long enough for Nora to step sideways, raising her shotgun now barrel level, voice calm. Fire again, and winter claims 15 graves. Strangers wade frost, flame, and resolve cut from widow's loss. Horses shuffled, steam rising like spirits. Scar swiveled, eyes narrowing. Lady, you betting your life on a thief's aim? Nora did not blink. Betting yours on widow patience. She squeezed trigger half weight, enough to prove readiness. Minutes stretched thin, flurries ticking against coats. A rider muttered about frostbite. Scar snarled, but calculation replaced anger. He knew barns packed tight with hay burned quick. He also knew riflemen high in rafters draw clean lines on open snow. He holstered Colt. We leave, he said, spitting again. But winter's long. Road might loop back. He wheeled gelding, barked orders. Riders turned, boots crunching in reluctant accord. 15 silhouettes blurred into falling flakes, hoofbeats fading like bad debt. If watching one wounded shot scatter 15 saddles sparked your pulse, tap like so more wanderers find this fire before dawn. Freezes courage. Wind dropped. Silence reclaimed yard, broken only by barn hinge squeal when Nora stepped inside. Calder sagged a straw, rifle clattering. She barred the door, leaned shotgun against beam, then reached for lantern, lighting wick with steady hand. Warm glow flooded hay dust. Calder rasped apology, but Nora raised palm. No words yet. She unrolled bandages, retied knife gash, pressed snow-packed cloth to fevered brow. Only when his breath eased did she speak. They will circle back. We need distance before nightfall. He nodded, thumb brushing oilskin pouch still in her apron. Unspoken promise. Share weight of consequence. Outside, snow eased, sky opening to pale blue where sun attempted courage. Inside barn, boards absorbed resolve like new nails hammered straight. Two strangers, now welded by threat, prepared for a road whose length neither could name, but whose first mile began the moment trust outpaced fear. Sun pushed cloud rags west, painting the barn's tin roof pewter. Nora filled a grain sack with salt pork, hard biscuit, and the spare tin cup. Calder slipped the oilskin pouch inside his coat, then cinched a canvas belt tight enough that movement would not tear fresh stitches. Every gesture unfolded quiet, practiced, as if the two had drilled together for years rather than hours. They led Nora's dun mare from the paddock, tied a makeshift travois of fence rails behind the saddle. Snow creaked when they eased Calder onto the slats. Pain flickered in his face, yet he did not groan. He laid the Henry across his knees, thumb brushing the trigger guard like rosary bead. Nora took reins, headed east toward creek bottoms, where scrub cottonwood grew thick. Prairie stretched white, but the last gale had swept drifts into knife-edged scars that hid shallow gullies. She guided the mare along wind-scoured patches, hoof prints leaving only shallow bruises on crust. Behind them the barn receded, a lone square against pale horizon, its secrets sealed in churned straw and cooling ashes. Mid-morning brought the old stage road, two frozen ruts crossing the flats. No sign of hoof or wheel since the storm. Nora turned south, eyes always scanning backtrail for riders, ears tuned to any echo that might break the hush. Calder drank meltwater from the tin, color slowly returning to cheeks beneath frostburn. Voice rasped softer now, words stitched end to end. Red Owl Ford. 2 hours if pace holds. Nora nodded. She knew the crossing, a braid of river shrubs and sandbars where cattle drives halted for noon graze. Ice likely fragile, yet bridges upstream meant wasted miles. Speed trumped sure ground when 15 saddles could hard gallop free of snowbank by afternoon. They pressed on, sun climbed, snow crystals flashed like shattered glass underfoot. Twice Calder lifted rifle at distant lumps that proved sage stumps. Each time his breath steadied afterward, guilt visible. Nora said nothing. Fear's betrayals made poor conversation. Instead, she set the mare at a jog when the grade slanted down toward willows stripped bare by winter. Near midday, they reached the bluff above Red Owl. River ice shone gray, cut through by dark seams where current spoke beneath. Willows shivered along banks, roots clawed into sand too cold for yield. Nora dismounted, led the mare down the slope, feet sliding in powder. At water's edge, she broke a thin layer with a shovel salvaged from barn. Under glaze, a crust thick as glass responded with hollow boom, but did not crack wide. Safe for horse weight? Maybe. She studied current swirl under surface, mapped line of least risk. Calder shifted on travois, knuckles blanching around rifle, as if will alone could freeze the river thicker. They crossed slow. Ice groaned, echoes rolling under boots like drums in far rooms. Halfway, the mare slipped, fetlock punching through, water geysering, snort of panic. Nora steadied reins, whispered calm while backing the animal one step left where ice held. Calder slid sideways on rails, pain tightening lips, yet rifle never wavered. Last yards passed under a hush dense as wool. When they reached opposite bank, breath released in clouds that trailed skyward like prayers delivered. They cut into alder thicket, following deer path that paralleled water. Branches lattice high enough to hide horse and travois from broad sight, yet wide enough for passage. Snow thinned under canopy. Ground showed mud streaks where melt crept. Here Nora halted, unsaddled mare, brushed sweat frost from hide. She built a twig fire in a pit of sand, smoke rising thin through alder blackline. Calder drank more melt. face slack but aware. They'll find crossing sign. Nora fed small flames, then banked them. Smoke would betray if wind turned. They'll ride straight on stage road first, chasing daylight. She lifted her husband's shotgun, checked both hammers. Night gives us lead. Calder held out the pouch. Coin may buy a wagon south. I cannot pay debt. Snowmelt dripped steady from alder twigs, ticking like slow clock. Nora took the pouch, weighed it, then tucked it back into his coat. Money fixes fences, not fate. Afternoon slid toward gray. They resumed, skirting River Bluff, where shadows pooled early. Sun dipped, pulling color from sky until only indigo lingered behind cottonwood tops. Camp had to be found before dark locked the world. Nora chose a bowl between twin ridges, windbreak tight, ground dry beneath spruce. She unpacked blanket, layered straw pulled from travois. Calder lay back, eyes closed, face exhaling lines of ache that softened edge by edge. She set snare wire near a rabbit trail, then returned to build stealth fire. Pine needles, handful of twigs, no flame above boot height, heat enough to warm stew tin, not enough to beacon. Steam rose, carrying time she'd pinched last summer. Smell coaxed memory of easier hours, sunlit pasture, her husband mending gate while she sliced bread. Memory did not cut, it hardened. Steady as post timbers, she still walked past each dawn. Night thickened. Above treetops, the stars emerged, bright as shield rivets. Calder ate slow, each spoonful measured. After, he drew bedroll to chin, voice near whisper. Tomorrow ridgeline leads to cross spur rail. Train leaves at dusk. Beyond that, desert waiters rarely ask names. Nora stirred embers. You'll ride train alone? He traced scar under bandage. Gang never forgets. I cannot bring ruin to those who give bread. Wind sighed through spruce. Branches swayed with ancient creek. For long span, only fire crackled. Finally, Nora spoke. Sentences bound smooth so breath would not trip. Someone taught me fences fall. Build again anyway. She poked coals until sparks spun up, then settled. Hour before dawn, distant thunder rolled, a cadence wrong for cloudless sky. Hoof beats on frozen road, miles west but closing steady. Gang had found stage ruts beyond barn and whipped horses all night. Nora doused coals, rolled blankets, cinched travois. Calder sucked breath, forced body upright, pain mashing words into groan. They moved before first violet rim of day, slipping from grove into open draw where frost made grass shimmer. Ahead, the ridge lifted steep, crowned by broken granite teeth. Beyond, Railtown waited, two dusty streets, cattle pens, water tower. Handcar noise already floated faint across still air. Reach it before riders breasted far slope, and train smoke might blot pursuit. Fail and valley would echo with gunfire. They climbed. Calder staggered beside travois, now empty, using rails as crutch, refusing seat so mare could step lighter. Nora led, eyes fixed on juniper snag that marked crest. Behind, hoof thunder grew distinct, 15 saddles drumming frozen earth. Wind carried voices, scar cursing distance, promising torch for every false shelter. If the climb toward a dawn train, with hoofbeats clawing the slope behind, pushed your heart to the edge, punch-like so the road stays lit for the next mile. Wind sharpened to a blade as Nora and Calder edged toward the granite teeth. Each step up the scree slope felt heavier than the last. Hooves slipped, snow sifted down like spilled salt. The mare groaned, foam frosting her bit. But Nora whispered steady cadence that matched the drum of her own pulse. Behind them, hoofbeats thickened, 15 rhythms merging into one long growl that rolled through the valley bowl. At the crest, raw dawn flared across the eastern sky, lighting a vast flat beyond. Cross Spur, a town no wider than a whistle stop, its water tower silhouette cut in rusty iron against pale fire. A thin column of coal smoke curled upward from the rail yard, locomotive coming to life for the southbound noon freight. Between ridge and rails stretched half a mile of sage flats stamped by old cattle trails. No trees, no cover, only open snow patched by rock ribs and winter-dead grass. Nora took one look back. A dark line snaked over the far ridge, Scar's gang, riding hard, they would crest within minutes. She eased Calder onto the mare's saddle, slashed the travois lashings, and slapped the rails free. Lighter weight meant a chance. Calder's jaw clenched, but he accepted, gripping pommel with wounded hand. Henry balanced across thighs. They pushed over the edge. Gravity lent speed. Mare skidded. Nora running, shotgun slung, boots carving zigzag runnels. Frost-stiff sage snapped underfoot. Calder looked past her shoulder. He could see Scar's crimson scarf flicking in wind, the man whipping his gelding into lather. Distance 400 yards in closing. Halfway down, Nora veered toward a seam in the ground, a dry arroyo buried in snow. She slid in, mare following with scrambling hooves. Shallow walls rose shoulder high, enough to hide them from rifles for a breath. Calder swung rifle around, braced barrel on saddle horn. The gang reached ridge crest, fanned out, shouting. Rifles barked, bullets whined off stone above the arroyo. Nora pushed east along the trench, eyes searching for the cattle chute she remembered. An abandoned wooden corral that opened directly onto the freight spur. Snow slithered into her collar, sweat freezing under scarf. Calder fired once, sending a puff of rock chips up the ridge, buying seconds as riders scattered. Ahead, the arroyo ended at a barbed wire fence twisted by past floods. Beyond, flat ground led straight to the water tower. Train smoke thickened, churning black into dawn's pale. Nora hacked wire with hatchet blows, hands numb, finally tearing a gap wide enough for mare to leap. She vaulted over, yanked reins. Calder urged the horse through, wood rails clattering behind. Open ground again. Every hoofbeat sounded like a drum roll at a verdict. Town dogs barked, a lone ranch hand at the stock pens raised a hat, jaw slack. Nora and Calder cut south toward the siding, hooves pounding frozen mud, mare's breath billowing. Behind, Scar's gang spilled from arroyo, like wolves scenting heat, lever guns pumping. Calder twisted, fired 3 slow shots, methodical, each forcing riders to jink. One bullet found a bay's shoulder, horse screamed, rider toppled, dusting white with red. Gap opened, Scar snarled, drew pistol, loosing wild rounds that whistled over Nora's head. They reached the cattle chute, weathered rails, gate hanging askew. Nora yanked the gate shut behind, dropped the bolt, but the hinge sagged. A rifle butt could shear it. No time to argue. She vaulted onto rear saddle, shotgun leveled backward. Mare surged down the narrow planks, hooves thundering hollow over decking. Ahead, locomotive hissed, brakes squealing, crew shunting freight cars into coupling line. Steam rolled, hiding platform. Shouts snapped from rail yard as workers spied gunfire behind the chute. One brakeman waved, signaling engineer. Whistle shrieked, metal giant ready but not yet rolling. Nora steered mare alongside a coal car still uncoupled, reins jerking. She swung down, helped Calder dismount. Dupain buckled his knees. Gunfire splintered chute boards. Scar's men had breached gate. Nora slapped mare's flank. Horse bolted down track, drawing some rifles away. She dragged Calder to the gap between coal bins, bodies pressed against cold iron. Engines hissed close. Heat of boiler fought winter breath. Scar's voice cut through steam. End of line, thief. Widow, trade gold for mercy. Spurs clanged on platform boards. 5, maybe 6 riders had made the chute alive. Townfolk bolted doors. No law on cross spur, but distance and luck. Calder rested barrel on coupler, eyes narrowed. Nora raised shotgun at knee height, waiting the shadow that matched voice. Scar stepped through steam, crimson scarf now vivid against soot flakes. Colt in hand, finger taut on trigger. Behind him 2 torches flared, men ready to fire the freight if blood did not buy coin. If the sight of steam swirling between iron and vengeance churns your gut, slam that like so this showdown rings past the ridge. Train whistle shrieked again. Engineer saw flames, open throttle. Couplers clanked, wheels groaned, steel inching. Scar glanced left, momentary confusion. Nora fired. Buckshot roared. Torchbearer spun, flame arcing into snow. Calder's Henry cracked. Scar's pistol flew, bullet carving wood. Gang staggered, steam screaming louder until steel wheels bit rails, and the freight began its slow crawl south. Nora shoved Calder onto the low ladder rung of the coal car. Pain be damned. She climbed behind, gripped his belt, hauling until both flopped onto black cold coal. Freight lurched, gears hammered, speed crawling but sure. Scar lunged, grabbing last rung. Nora swung stock of shotgun, knuckles splitting on steel. Blow landed square on Scar's cheek. Scar slipped, boots skidding on ballast, fingers losing rung. Train rolled, leaving him kneeling in snow, steam shadowing scream into white. Riders fired after the freight, bullets pinging iron, but distance widened each heartbeat. Torches guttered in rising wind. Cross spurs shrank, rails devouring miles. Nora never thought she'd leave behind. Calder lay gasping, gaze locked on widening horizon. Nora pressed hand to his brow, fever hot, but eyes bright. Train pounded south, smoke pouring overhead like a banner stolen from storm. Snow still fell, yet between flakes a sunbeam finally touched the coal, sparkling ember flecks. Nora breathed slow, letting speed promise things no fences could hold. Freight wheels hammered a slow hymn, each strike stitching fresh miles between the fugitives and scarlet-scarved rage left behind. Coal car walls rattled, metal echo rowing across winter plains. Steam overhead mingled with powder snow still falling, though flakes thinned with every southern breath the engine exhaled. Nora wrapped her spare blanket around Calder, tucking edges beneath raw palms. Fever glazed his eyes, but pulse held firm thanks to the rumble's steady lull. She crushed juniper berries from her pocket, mixed them in melted snow pooled on coal, then trickled the bitter tea past cracked lips. He swallowed, whispered gratitude too soft for the whistle wind to steal. They rode hours like that. Nora crouched as sentry, Calder drifting in and out of a half-sleep, where rifles still thrummed underhand. Once, when trains slowed at an isolated siding, she peered between coal slats. Only ranch pens, no station, just rough track hands swinging lanterns. She kept silent, let the freight clank past without drawing eyes. Mid-afternoon brought change. Snow sputtered into rain, washing soot from her coat, teasing scent of sage somewhere beyond rails. Horizon melted from iron to rust to muted ochre, the edge of desert where winter held shorter rain. Calder stirred, fever cooling, gaze clearer. He nodded at the shrink of clouds as if some inner weight loosened with them. Near dusk, the train whistled long and plaintive. Next water stop, last before canyon country. Rusted signs slid by reading Mesquite Wells, a two-platform town, adobe storehouse, water tower leaning like a drunk against sun. Train hissed, brakes squealed, cars grumbling to reluctant halt. Engineers swung down, boots ringing on ballast. Nora pressed ear to metal. 30 minutes for refuel, maybe less. Decision sparked noiselessly. Stay aboard into nights unknown, or step into dusty light where pursuit might limp slower. She tapped Calder's shoulder. He met her question without words, pushed himself upright, jaw set through pain-shadowed features. He slung rifle over back and tested boots on shifting coal. Legs shook, held. They climbed the ladder, dropping to gravel as unseen by yard crew as two ghosts half made of soot. Evening sun painted long bars of fire across platform boards. Few locals milled, a telegraph boy fiddling wire, a mother herding children inside the mercantile before dark, a freight clerk scratching manifests. None cared for a blanket-draped stranger and a widow with shotguns slung low like farm tool. They cut east of the water tower toward a cluster of cottonwoods hugging a shallow arroyo. Under branches buzzed first crickets of early spring. Air smelled of damp earth instead of iron. There they paused. Calder unbuttoned coat, withdrew the oilskin pouch, placed it in Nora's hands. Coins clinked, but heavier shape thumped, a silver pocket watch engraved with Gothic F across lid. "My cut," he said, voice rough yet calm. "Gang robbed banker's payroll east of here. I took watch because it once belonged to the clerk they pistol-whipped. He begged me to keep it safe, return when able." Guilt flickered beneath lashes. Money is blood-stained. Keep what feeds stock. The watch needs a home that isn't mine. Nora weighed pouch, then folded his fingers back around it. Fever hasn't burned the debt clear. You deliver. She slipped 2 coins free instead, enough for goat grain come spring, no more. Calder's throat worked, but protest died when she met his stare. Justice, she implied, matters only if carried by the one who owes. Distant whistle blew, engine ready. Over cottonwoods they watched smoke tilt west, train shrinking into aquamarine twilight. Boots on gravel far behind signaled workers climbing aboard. Soon rails rang empty. They followed Arroyo south as night settled, stars drilling holes in velvet. At a shallow bend they found an abandoned line shack. Mud brick, roof half missing, but hearth intact. Nora built small fire from mesquite deadfall, its scented smoke spiraling gently under crescent moon. Heat thawed coal dust from cheeks. Fatigue seeped away in rising warmth. Calder sat opposite, pocket watch nestled in palms like fragile bird. He confessed stories between crackles, drifting since Shiloh, living off games of chance until chance turned teeth. Nora listened, mending a saddle strap she'd salvaged, nodding not in judgment, but witness. Words weighed less in firelight, yet meant more. Each sentence joined the night's quiet like rail fish plates tying track. When logs collapsed to coals, Calder asked the question carried since barn door first slammed. Why risk your acres for unknown trouble? Nora fed a twig to orange glow, spoke slow so breath and meaning remained partners. Storms choose doors. We don't, but we choose whether to open. She met his eyes steady. My roof felt lighter for one more heartbeat inside. Silence settled soft. Outside, coyotes yipped, distant, content. Inside, 2 travelers shared bread crusts and a fragile but certain truce with tomorrow. Calder wound the watch once, its tick-tick merging with popping embers until both became lullaby. Sun spilled bronze across Arroyo walls when they woke. No hoofbeats, no smoke on northern sky. Nora packed blanket, cinched strap, readied mare. Calder rolled his stiff shoulder, color in cheeks again. Path forked, south to border towns where gangs rarely roamed, east to Riverbend, where banker's office waited for lost timepiece. They laughed, surprised at how simple choice now felt. 2 lines crossing into one. First the watch, Calder decided, voice steady. Nora mounted, extended a hand. He swung up behind, winced yet smiled. Hooves stepped onto frost-silver sage, cutting twin tracks toward sunrise. If this journey, of stew shared in silence, of torches faced with steady eyes, of coal smoke trading pursuit for promise, lit something in you, tap like, ride the subscribe trail, and tell in the comments which moment forged your own resolve. The widow's calm at the barn door, the rock slide in the gulch, or the steam-shrouded blow that sent vengeance spinning into snow. Your words keep the fire bright for wanderers still lost in the storm.